State. I'm trying to eat down a whole nother plate. Seem like my homies were stuck in the hood. I just told them be safe in the state.
Welcome to the Black Men's Podcast. Welcome to the Black Men's Podcast. Nobody beat me this time.
I tried.
We are back with the full tea crew. And lemonade. Back with the full crew. Tea and lemonade, sure. Back with the full crew.
No, it really is this time. It really is this time.
Okay, you have fans literally like watching you drink, but back for the first time in forever with the whole crew. It's not just me or just Ryan or a guest. It's just the crew breaking it down today. So I want to welcome everybody back. Three of the four of us had children. So it's been,
Black told me my maternity leave was over and to bring my ass back to work. So here I am. If y'all hear this baby crying in the back, so be it.
My son just been
back on cue.
Say what's up?
My son's been whooping my ass.
Oh, I understand. It's all boys too, like all three.
Don't worry. Ryan's got some in the cut that he just don't be wanting y'all to know.
I don't have nothing in the cut.
He's on his Drake tip. He's on his Drake tip.
Little Michael, little Jaleel, little
my
Kwame.
kids, they don't eat, they don't drink, they don't sleep.
Adonis.
Those Recon.
Dear Adonis.
I guarantee Ryan has an illegitimate name, Jalen. There's always a Jalen. It's always a Jalen.
None of that. Ever.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But yeah, we back here. Shout out to people that have, stuck with us as we've had to patchwork this shit. But we really have not missed a month in forever. I haven't, despite all of that. May not always be 2 episodes. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 1. But sometimes it's just the 2, but we haven't missed anything. So shout out to all the patrons. I don't think there were any new patrons. It says Ryan canceled his membership. That's interesting.
Damn, Ryan, you don't even support your home anymore. That's crazy.
It's like that.
Oh, some financial stuff, but it's all good. I'll be back.
And that's a good segue because it's interesting. We're going to be dealing with economics, finance, and I know money is tight because of tariffs and the economy in general is not doing as well as they want to tell us it is. Inflation, etc. So I understand why some of y'all are dipping, but we appreciate those of you who have stayed on. It looks like Newt was the last new member to join, so shout out to Newt, N-E-W-T.
Big shout out to Newt.
Shout out to Newt. And shout out to all the free members. We don't shout you out by name necessarily because you ain't put no money up, but we definitely appreciate you. We see you. So today's myth was not initially planned. We were actually supposed to do an episode, which we'll probably do next month, with Rasul about the Klan, and Rasul wants to do 3 episodes on the Klan because there was 3 different ways of the Klan. And since we're in a time where folks are talking about white nationalism, it'll be useful. But that takes study, and we were studying but didn't quite have the time. Part of why that happened is because I was writing another piece called Kids Corner Economics, What Tariffs Teach Us About Black Capitalism. This was published in Grassroots Thinking. Shout out to J. Ezra McCoy, the new editor over there, for getting them back up on scale. I felt like it was good timing because we got shouted out by FD Signifier. He did a video on Killer Mike and his confusions over Black capitalism, and he shouted out our episode that we've done in the past, Black Wall Street, the myth that Black Wall Street was self-sustaining.
The video was amazing. That video was dope.
Yeah.
Shout out to my Chicago twin over there.
So appreciate.
Hey, yo,
they do kind of look alike, yeah,
bro. Y'all go at
Um,
least cousins. At least
if we
cousins.
started to do a
Yeah, there's
video,
been moments where I watched a video of him and I watched some of his temperament, some of the stuff that he says. I'll be like, maybe we are related. I don't know.
if we start doing video essays, they're gonna think we trying to like cheat, like we're just using you as a fake FD or something. Like,
It's AI.
RM signifier.
like, so he shouted us out, so it felt like I had just published that like a day or two before I think that video popped. So it felt like good timing. So since this is an episode we're familiar with, or this is a subtopic, I should say, we're familiar with. So the myth itself was just black capitalism, which we've debunked that in many different ways, but we're going to be a little more specific. So the myth is black capitalism equals sovereignty, because that's how black capitalism likes to sell itself through its kind of branding, is that it's sovereign, that it's community control, it's independence, as we're going to get at, it doesn't really achieve those ends whatsoever. So instead of just some of the stuff will sound familiar that we've dealt with before, like the circulating black dollar. But the main angle that was taken in the piece that I published, and the main angle we're going to take today, is thinking about it from the perspective of trade, from the perspective of tariffs. And tariffs have obviously been in the conversation because of President Trump, and the kind of just wild, tariffs that he's just imposed in different countries. And a lot of people are scrambling, trying to make sense of it. Just recently, the tariffs on India went through. It was 50% tariffs. We'll explain tariffs and everything later, so I won't get too deep into that. But that's causing a lot of turmoil around the world, especially as the actual tariff rates are starting to kick in. And black businesses have been affected too. And if black businesses were as sovereign as they claim, then tariffs really should have no impact. So, so with that being said, I open the floor as we normally do for folks to discuss the myth and what they think, and then we can get into the episode.
Well, first off, I would like to address your article. First of all, commend you for an amazing and thought-provoking article. Of course, we expect that because you always do quality work. But I absolutely love the fact that you're tying black capitalism and its flawed ideology to the global economy, because that is always ignored. Because you can't divorce black capitalism from globalization, because all the goods that you use to keep your business operating are imported from another country. Often it's a country that's being heavily exploited by global capitalist imperialist system, and the black elite refuse to reckon with that fact. And if they did reckon with that fact, it would expose them as the frauds they are. So that's why I feel like, I think all of us watching, all of us on Black Liberation Media would understand why we need liberation to be a global movement. So
yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's real. That's real.
Exactly.
I feel like by the end of this, folks are gonna feel, especially those who may own their own business, a little jaded by us. But the premise of today, and I think one thing that we're always striving to push, is an understanding of like where we as individuals stand in the global context and in the community context. And I think it's important to recognize the ways in which not only um are we acting from a space of like sometimes good intent. I don't think a lot of these black businesses have great intent. I think folks are just playing the capitalist game and trying to make money. But I do know that there are plenty of folks who have businesses that are aimed at trying to be a part of the community while also not recognizing that through propaganda, through just the ways in which we're taught about economics, especially in this country, that we oftentimes are doing harm in the same capacities that harm is being done to us, and most of that stems from a lack of understanding and an ignorance of what this all means in a global context, even just in a regional context. And we've talked about pieces of this in multiple episodes. And myths of the circulating dollar, when we even talked about Black Wall Street, when we did laundering, and just talking about the ways in which all of these pieces play together. And so I hope that through today's episode, folks are able to see, especially if you haven't been able to listen to those episodes in pieces, to be able to see all of this through a larger lens.
And we'll link those episodes.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me.
And it's like, if you feel upset, it's all right, feel upset and then do better. Um, and while
I
also,
think
and
I
occasionally
think
folks
it's
need to be whacked.
I think the times we in right now are real eye-opening when it comes to that. Because, like, for example, when we talk about tariffs, I mean, we'll get into it later, but we're talking about taxes. And when we talk about, these black-owned businesses, and we're promoting, you know, being business owners and this, and that's what's going to uplift the black community, but we're suffering from the same ills of capitalism. What does that really say? Like, and I think a lot of people are starting to recognize that, like, yo, like, well, what was it? We're shifting from where they were talking about, tariffs and whatnot. It's just taxes, and they're shifting taxes from this place to
Yeah,
here.
it's like you said, just a
Mhm.
Like
tax.
we're not like, yeah, okay, we might not pay a tax here, but we're gonna get taxed here. So, like, like, it's still a bigger economic game that we're starting to. I feel like we're starting to recognize what it is, and I said it years ago. We've all said it. Black capitalism is still capitalism. We're still a part of that game, no matter what part you think you're playing in it. And I, I can't really knock too many people that's like, hey, yo, buy black, because, like, most of them are just out for self, and I'm like, I get it. Take care of your household, take care of your family, do what you got to do, but just recognize it is what it
Yeah,
is.
don't brand it.
Mhm.
Don't brand
When you
it as
don't,
community building when that's not it. And like I
Yeah.
said,
yeah,
and
especially when you
we
don't own the
recognize.
means of production of anything like that. It's not. It's that's not getting our liberation. That's just not it.
Or
When you
recognize
don't
where you
own the
are
means
and
of
that you're
production.
recognize that you're a
Exactly.
pawn in this. Like I said earlier, like we know that there are plenty of folks who just want to be a part of this capitalist machine and they are out for self and they got these
Mm-hmm.
businesses because they want to make money for themselves
Cool.
to do
Just say
things.
that.
Mm-hmm.
However, we also recognize that there is still a need for us to be able to support one another, to put dollars in each other's pockets, to be able to provide for our families and communities. And there are folks who are trying to do that, however, are not recognizing the ways in which that they too are still being played. And a lot of that propaganda has been pushed down all of our throats. All of us here still support Black business. The earrings I got on are from a Black person. Most of the things that most of us have
For
shown
sure.
on this
Like,
show
bro,
at many
the
times.
necklace.
And
The haircut.
the
Yeah.
sentiment is
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
However, we need to understand the roles in which we play, the harm that we can enact on each other, the harm that is intentionally being enacted on us through this notion that Black capitalism will lead to our liberation, by the push for buy Black, all of that, Black buying power, things we'll talk about further in this episode. But until you know how the enemy is playing and playing you, it's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
lot harder for us, as Ryan already said, to really be pushing towards liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what
Exactly.
is it? What is it?
And
What's the cost of another black millionaire for real? Like, making another black million. What does that really cost us?
right. And I
Like, yeah,
mean, and to bring it on home to the point about relegating us to the kids' corner, most of the stuff that we were talking about, um, is not even like in the forefront of the minds of people who are owning black businesses and who operate black businesses. Um, if I can just be transparent, um, there's somebody here in Muncie that is operating under the notion that black business will bring liberation, right? And they do this thing where they're interviewing people, and one of my name gets dropped in the comments. Hey, you should interview Ryan. And I'm like thinking to myself, reading Black's article, like how is
you
this
don't want
interview going to go when I am
to.
completely anti-capitalist, and you people don't know that because all you see is a black man with dreadlocks who's doing black things in the community, and they don't make the connection. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, let's drop him for an interview." It's like, no, it's not going to
Yeah.
go the way you think it's going to go. You know what
Yeah.
I
It's
mean?
like I was telling that story and on when I was on Dr. Ball's pod,
Hmm.
and on a mix what I like, and we were talking about I was telling that story about when we were at the conference and and that then one of the vendors was talking to us,
Hmm.
the Black Radical Organizer Conference. One of the vendors was talking to us about they want to do a presentation on black business, and it was just funny because it's like,
Yep.
again, I don't want to clown these people because they
Yeah.
people mean well. That's part of why I be writing this stuff. I think people think we trying to bash folks or whatever, but a lot of this is like because we love y'all and we hate to see y'all down like this. Like
Hmm.
a lot of it is that like we
Talking
love
crazy at
y'all.
conferences.
Yeah. We hate to see y'all like totally out here confused and
Hmm.
misled and you know, I it actually really does bother me to know that, you know, there are definitely, like Cam said, people who are full of shit, and that's we're not really trying to reach those people. But for the folks who are just get caught up in these things, it's hard to watch
Yeah.
people that, you know, are falling into this stuff over and over again, and it's just fundamentally not understanding how the world works. And then, like we'll get to later, the way that black capitalism specifically, not just capitalism in general, but the kind of branding of black capitalism, it severs a part of your brain from even wanting to know how the world works.
Yeah.
So it's almost like another myth I'd like to do one day is a prosperity gospel. Because
Hmm.
but it's almost
And
like
then
this
we gonna
is
come for all of you fucking generational wealth ass niggas. If I have to hear generational wealth one more time, and y'all talking about flipping houses, like
yeah,
being a landlord is not something to be proud of.
yeah.
Not at
You're
all.
scamming
A
your own people.
landlord in a
I
landfill.
bought a building, flipped it, and now I'm charging other black people twice as much. Great. Congratulations. You're exploiting your people.
Yeah,
But a landlord in a
and you're
landfill.
just
which
gonna
is
gentrify the block more than you're gonna buy it
Yay.
back.
Sorry, that's
isn't
a
that
whole nother
counterproductive
tirade. Let
to
me be quiet for right now and stay on
isn't that
topic.
counterproductive to what the whole
Yeah.
what we're
Again,
trying to do here?
again,
But
we
that's
could,
that's
yeah,
that's
We're
yeah,
gonna
another
have a
yeah.
whole
thing.
episode on
Again,
that.
prosperity gospel. I mean, I want to deal with it theologically, but also just the underpinnings of it. But I think this is a kind of what do they say in church? This is a secular. I think black capitalism is a secular version of prosperity gospel. You know,
Hmm.
like like it's
Ooh,
you know, it's like it doesn't
preach
require you to have to
preacher.
bring God or any kind of spiritual things into it necessarily, but it's a very secular version because regardless of how much you hit people with these facts, a lot of them have bought into it so much that it does not matter. But again, I think that gets to this point about black capitalism. It naturalizes things to a sense that you don't think you can even be involved in anything other than just buying and consuming. But we'll get to that. So I'm gonna read a little bit from the piece. This is actually pretty short, so this won't be a long monologue. And then we're gonna, because I'm just gonna read a piece out the piece or a section out of the piece. Then we're gonna, before we even get to black capitalism, because to talk about that, like Terrell said, you got to talk about capitalism. So we're gonna just give some definitions and explain trade, tariffs, and things of that nature. All right. The injections of tariff and trade into the public discourse heightens the contradictions of the black capitalist mythos, which were magnified following the 2020 police murder of George Floyd. Following the alleged racial awakening, capitalists made big promises: generational wealth, financial freedom, economic independence, positioning black capitalism as as a state laundered solution to the problems of police brutality, wealth inequality, and opportunity. With enthusiasm and glee, black capitalism received the backing of the White House, multinational corporations, and the black misleadership class. This propaganda was so effective that in at least one survey, black people ranked black business as the second most, quote, extremely very effective, end quote, solution, higher than, quote, protesting and volunteering as a solution for quote, helping black people move towards equality in the United States. I don't want to stop there and say where black folks were measured or were polled and say they think black business is the second best way to solve our problems. The only thing that topped it was voting. That was the only thing that trumped it. It need not matter that as of late of 2020, black business made up only 0.3% of all business revenue in the US, or that Walmart, as we talked about in the show before, generated more revenue as a business than all 3 million black businesses combined. It says 2020 in the article, but it's actually 2024 because I fact checked it further. So again, Walmart produced more revenue than all black businesses put together. Black capitalism was still shown as the path to liberation. This logic, although deeply flawed, was understandable conflation for the black masses to make. Black capitalism via black business is marketed as a symbol of black autonomy in a world where little exists. Who would not support black business if it truly empowered us to control our neighborhoods, protect the George Floyds from police terror, and provide for our families? Nonetheless, black capitalism fulfills none of these deeds. For the purpose of this episode, in honor of those who don't know, it's actually National Black Business Month. So, in honor of National Black Business Month, we will use tariffs and trade to highlight the contradictions and limitations of each myth while decoupling the legitimate sentiments that may drive us to support them. So to give you some definitions, and then y'all can jump in off of this because again, we're talking about trade and again these tariffs that have been slapped on these different countries by this current administration has caused some real problems for black businesses, which is part of what brought me to write this. I was looking up research and the black businesses were like just today I was reading this piece in Reuters where there was a black hair salon that was selling wigs for 125. They're now $275.
Jeez.
Due to due to due to tariffs. There was people saying that they used to get their hair done. A black lady said she used to get her hair done 5 times a year. Now she says she's only going to get her hair done once a year, right? Like so these people are dealing with like this is a real thing for folks, and that's just these are just anecdotes that are happening on a much broader level. So what is all this shit? What is the kind of system that is in place that even gets us to those kind of stories, right? So trade, which I'm sure most people have some sense of, is just we're going to give you simple definitions, is the goods and services imported and exported between countries, right? So if even if Black Myths was to go record a podcast in Canada, and we were paid for that, that would be considered a service, and that would technically be considered a form of trade. But on a much larger scale, when we get to tariffs and stuff, countries will sell their products as well as services, but they'll sell their products to another country. So our country might make ceramics, and we sell our ceramics to this country, right? So in a world with no tariffs, I can just sell my stuff to you. You buy it at the exchange rate within our money, and then you sell your stuff to me, and then so you export your stuff where it's like I have goods I'm going to export to this country, or you import things that you don't have or things that are cheaper into your country. Like very simple stuff. So when you hear things about Trump will complain about us, like the United States, there's us, but the United States having a trade deficit or a trade surplus, but we have trade deficits with these countries, he'll say. But a trade deficit isn't inherently a bad thing. It just means that, it means that the country exports more to you than you import. A trade surplus just means that a country that you export more to a country than
Or
they
then you
import to you.
import.
Yeah. So, but having a deficit is just some countries, they just have what you need. There's nothing you need to export to them. Just think about a basic exchange. If Terrell cuts my hair, like I don't have to export anything to Terrell. I just pay him for cutting my hair and that's the end of it. Right. Like, so I took that service from him, but I don't need to give him a service back or a product back. So some countries, particularly smaller countries, do things really well, things that the United States may not really want to do. All right. So they just import it in. And since, United States is mainly driven by consumption, it imports more than anyone else in the world. And we're going to get into the history of that. That's a system that the United States put in place. So now that they feel like they're losing to countries like China and others because they put that system in place, so other countries have been able to industrialize and build up and make things in their own country. Now the United States feels under this regime that they need to somehow reindustrialize and catch up. At least that's the stuff that they're saying, even though actually manufacturing jobs have been going away by the tens of thousands the last few months since these tariffs have been put in place. So then there's a thing called gross domestic product. That's just all the gross domestic product is just all goods and services done, within an economy or within the world. So for those of you who heard me on Dr. Ball, I was giving the number according to the World Bank. There was 111 trillion in 2024 gross domestic product done across the world. That's just all economic activity, basically. So all the goods and services that are exchanged that can be documented, 111 trillion. So when people talk about black buying power, which is a made up number, but even if you take the number, it's 1.9, maybe 2 trillion. The entire world did 111 trillion. Okay, just to give you a sense of how even if that was a real number, it's not even close to,
So
touching.
1.9 to 111.
Trillion,
Okay.
So,
bruh.
That's gonna really get us out the struggle.
yeah.
We're gonna be
Um,
real free, y'all. Real
yeah.
free.
Let me
Yeah.
let me stop talking shit.
So tariffs are taxes on imported goods, and tariffs are not necessarily always a bad thing. I think people probably get that impression because of what we're watching happen. But we'll give a example, a few examples later. But tariffs is just simply I mean, like even when people talk about the United States and the whole so-called American Revolution and the Tea Party and how you had the white folks throwing this shit into the
Hmm.
ocean, that it was it
It's
was
been
it
good tea, by the way.
yeah, 90,000 I think boxes of tea or something like that. They were mad because there was a tariff on the
On the
tea,
T.
so tea went up, like the price of
Hmm.
tea went up. But like Terrell was saying, it's just a tax, right? So, but if you're a country that's trying to protect your goods, we'll get to some of this a little bit later. You don't want the competition from another country to come in and ruin your economy, so you will tariff their goods so you can build up your economy. So if you have your own agriculture, your own farming, you're not going to let another country import all their shit and ruin your farming because they can maybe undercut you because they're more developed. So you tariff them to keep so you can protect your industry, which gets us to this concept of like protectionism, which is what some folks say that Donald Trump and them is trying to do. It's economic ideology. This is Cornell law that this is their definition. Economic ideology that advocates using tariffs and other government restraints to protect domestic businesses from international competition. So most of the West did that at one point. They built their country up by
Hmm.
tariffing and making sure they protected their industries. But once they built them up, then they wanted everybody else to take the tariffs off so they could go and raid those countries too. That's what we call imperialism. So that's where you get free trade. Again, this is the definition from Cornell, but free trade refers to trade policy that advocates international trade without restrictions by government against imported or exported products, such as trade of goods without taxes or trade barriers, the trade and service without taxes or trade barriers, and unregulated access to markets and market information. So it is that free trade is, okay, you just trade.
Yeah, right. Strike a deal.
Yeah, we just strike a deal, and it's just based on the exchange of our currencies. That's the only real
Yeah.
fluctuation. Other than that, it is what it is. There's no extra tax added to it. And then that can be okay if both countries are developed to a certain point. That becomes a major problem when you have an extremely developed country and then you have one that's been underdeveloped due to capitalism, and then you want
Hmm.
to do free trade because there's no way that they can really like hold that power dynamic. So this is an example from a piece written by our comrade Erica Keynes and Musa Springer. It was called Tariffs, Economics, and Coercion in U.S. Imperialism, and it talks about this is a real story. In the 1990s, under the guise of promoting so-called free trade, President Clinton in the U.S. pressured Haiti to slash its tariffs on imported rice from 50% to just 3%. This was sold as part of a free trade deal, but it really opened the floodgates for cheap, heavily subsidized U.S. rice, nicknamed Miami rice, to take over Haiti's markets. Haiti's farmers couldn't compete with the low prices and were forced out of business. A country used to be self sufficient in growing most of its own rice became dependent on imports to feed its people. So it just ruined those industries. But this happens. This happens. That's why imperialism should be understood both domestically and internationally. This has happened to black businesses too, maybe not at the same scale, where black
Hmm.
businesses under Jim Crow were able to serve their communities because there wasn't as much competition. And then big corporations, once Jim Crow ended, formal Jim Crow ended, came into those neighborhoods and were able to offer goods and services at better, more competitive rates, and these businesses could not keep up. Right? This
Hmm.
doesn't just happen to black businesses; this happens to small businesses in general. So black
Yeah.
businesses have actually declined in numbers since so-called integration to the point where, like we said at the top of the show, they make up 0.3% of all business revenue. Even a few decades ago, they made up 1%. You could keep going. I was looking at something in the 80s. I think it made up like 3%. It's still not a lot,
Hmm.
but it's like declined as more consolidation has occurred.
And
Uh,
what you just described also happens. Walmart moves into certain
yeah,
cities and small towns, and the small businesses there, the mom and pop stores can't compete, so they end up, ceasing to exist because you can't compete with a juggernaut like a Walmart.
no,
Even restaurants, like
Hmm.
and I think a good depiction that I saw of this on TV recently was on the Netflix show Ginny and Georgia. They're in like a really small ass, quintessential, very Gilmore Girly ass town, and there's
Hmm.
only one major. There's like a couple of major restaurants, but one like really small coffee shop, bakery that everybody goes to and loves. And there was something put up on the ballot. Stating that they wanted to allow for larger businesses to come in, Starbucks, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, things like that. And the community was divided because, of course, when they go to these big cities, they see all of these things, but also all of the small businesses are having these conversations of like, if y'all let these Starbucks in, my coffee shop is done for. And even
Hmm.
when we see in a lot of our communities now, like all these coffee shops pop up, bookstores popping up, all of these new small businesses that are really trendy, unfortunately, in the moment, they still struggle to compete with these larger names. There's a local bookstore that I love, a Black-owned bookstore that constantly talks about the pressure and the expectation that people come in thinking that they're going to get books at the same price that you're going to get on Amazon,
yeah,
who
Yeah.
who operates from a deficit intentionally because they make so much money they need tax breaks.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and
My
But
so it
once
just
favorite
pushes people out.
Yeah, my favorite black business in Indianapolis, Black World Schoolers, that sells, they were at the conference, they sell black books. Now, Natalie is smart. She's like, she understands brick and mortar is not really the move. So she has a bus and she'll pull up with books and sell sell a different, sell as kind of a vendor as opposed to, a brick and mortar store. But she always says like, don't buy anything on Amazon. Like, and when you talk to this book, like small business booksellers, they'll say don't buy anything on Amazon because booksellers don't get a cut, and and Amazon, even with my book, like Amazon sells my book cheaper on Amazon than you can get it on the publisher's site because they have a way of undercutting. Walmart can do this too, right? Like they
They get to
undercut.
operate on a deficit.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and like you said, they're subsidized often. And that's the thing about when we talk about tariffs, is these bigger corporations. One, some of these tariffs, when you look into the details, that some of the tariffs that Trump has put in place, they have what's called carve outs. Well, let's say specific industries
Yeah.
can still trade, free trade, and then everyone else
Hmm.
is subjected to tariffs. So, you'll have a situation where like Apple can find a way around it because they say we're going to invest money back in America, and Trump's like, okay, you're off the hook. And
Tesla.
you buy Trump a necklace or whatever. Was it Tim Cook bought Trump a necklace or whatever, and
Right.
you're off the hook, right? Or because or like Target and Walmart basically went to Trump when he was about to tax the hell out of China, and they were like, bro, if you do that, there's not going to be anything on shelves.
Nope.
Like basically what people, it's going to be pandemonium. So they had to create these carve outs for different industries, which shows how unserious a lot of this really is, honestly. I mean, an example, this is just New York Times, just yesterday talking about India, talking about carpet making is big business in India with 98% of the products shipped overseas. Hand tufted carpets form the bulk of the trade, whereas Persian style hand knotted rugs are the most valuable. In recent years, nearly 60% of that stock has gone to buyers in the United States. For American importers, that's a $500 rug now comes with 125 tariff or possibly a 251. And actually, it is 250 because the tariff rate is 50%. So that's $500 plus $250 added to it because what happens is the companies pass the price down the supply chain, which we'll get to later, and that arrives to you as the consumer. Some businesses, like when you read about it, small businesses, will try to absorb the cost, but like Cam was saying, they can't operate at a deficit. Like Amazon has so much money, they can burn through a few non-profitable years in ways that a small business that doesn't have a bunch of investors can't afford to
They get,
do.
they get a tax break on it. They're
Yeah,
not worried.
yeah,
you know. So even
So what? Real quick, then, wouldn't someone say that this is the most important time to support black businesses and stuff? Then,
I mean, again, it depends on what is the goal here.
Yeah.
Again, as much as I feel for these folks, it's like, are you supporting the black business for the purpose of exactly what? Like you're supporting them so they can just stay in business, or are you supporting them because it's gonna have some impact on your actual community? Like that's where people have to actually make that connection. If you're, so I'm saying, I think if you have a business that provides a service that is valuable to your community, then you should support it. But I don't
Yeah.
think you should just spend your money with a black business because they're black, right? So
Hmm.
if there is a bookseller, like Cam said, if there's a bookstore in your neighborhood, yeah, it's a good time to support that because you don't want to see that go. I would definitely take that over the shitty Christian books that they sell at Walmart. You know, like I would definitely take that any day. You're just as a pure consumer, but we also can't confuse just wanting these kind of services as this kind of like radical thing. It's
Yeah.
like,
right?
we have to see support as a part of an ethic that's tied to other struggles, and maybe a business that actually is invested in the community should be supported, but not just on the face of they're black. And even though
Hmm.
some of these businesses also, if since they want to do capitalism, that's how this works. It's market.
Let them get treated like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of y'all just need to go out of business. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't get to be floated just because you're black. Like your
Wow.
shit's whack is just whack. And since this is what you want to do, you don't want to do any kind of socialist experiment.
Yeah.
So
My
I'm
Hmm.
bad.
not gonna keep
I
you
was playing
alive.
devil guy.
I think
I
people
was
Yeah.
playing
also
devil advocate
forget.
with my question.
Yeah, I think you put it perfectly that a lot of people act like a majority of these black businesses are a revolutionary act. When
Yeah,
in reality we know that a lot of black businesses came out of a necessity. We were living in
That part.
segregated spaces in which we could not, and for some people did not want to be shopping at white-owned businesses. And so because it came when we talked about this during Black Wall Street, like folks weren't making money from their black businesses and becoming super rich to begin with because they had all of these glorious things. Folks were running dental offices, doctor's offices, grocery stores, the barber shop, you know, um, home improvement spaces selling materials that folks would need. And we still didn't own the means of production then, but folks were successful because they were providing a community essential. Folks were
Yeah.
growing watermelon and other
Hmm.
crops to be selling to each other because we had to. We didn't have an option to be a part of not even global trade, but even just trade within a larger community space within our cities, within our states, let alone anywhere else. And so when folks are praising and heralding these Black businesses, especially ones that have been around for a long time, many of them were also not opening these under the guise of getting rich. They were doing it because there was a need from the community.
it
The
was out of
restaurant,
necessity.
it was out of necessity, and folks were supporting them, one, because they had to, and two, once folks were able to integrate and shop other places, they wanted to continue so out of a place of integrity. And
Yeah.
so as we've transitioned, it was never really get out.
Hey,
Never
yo,
mind.
keep that in.
Maybe to the dog. And I think we forget that, and so now when folks are talking about, oh, I'm going to open this black business because it's going to help us get free out, ma'am. Um, and we talk about this all the time. Anytime we bring up black, what is your intent? Like,
Hmm.
what is your intent? On top of understanding the role that you're going to play just in a larger global capitalistic system,
Yeah. It's just like,
also, what is your intent? Are you actually creating are you answering a need of your community? If you live in a food desert, but you have connections with folks all over the place, and you're choosing to open a food bank, um,
Hmm.
in which you are, or even a store, so to speak, to make money, because a food bank is a nonprofit. You're not charging people for that. If you open a grocery store or a restaurant in your community because you have the resources and the connections to be able to bring goods into your community, whereas there is a lack, you are aiming to serve your community, and the money you may make from that, yay, congrats. That you making money from this space is not revolutionary. What are you doing with it? We've already
nah.
talked about the myth of the circulating black dollar. However, at least we understand that your push for support is because you're aiming to answer a need in your community, not you want to open a t-shirt shop, you want to sell. bundles, you want to do all of these other things that
Bitcoin. Yeah.
So it's
you're selling so
answering,
I can finance
like you said,
courses and things
answering.
like that. What need is that serving other than either than one, you trying to teach other people how to be a part of this capitalistic monster, and two, you want to make some money for yourself so we can go see you on Instagram on vacation on a yacht.
Yeah,
Telling
and
people how to get rich, they can do it like you.
it's also like when you say a need, right? It's important. This is the logic of capitalism. So there's a need, and so the need, instead of just the fact that there's a need is the problem in and of itself. So okay, you live in a food desert, so there's no way to get food in your neighborhood. That's a problem in and of itself. So why is the solution to that a business that profits? Right? Like that's the thing that people need to ask. Like, why is that the solution? If like food is an essential thing for people to live, why is that based on a business that profits? So I'm not saying don't open the grocery store because sometimes that's the best thing people can do. But I'm just saying we still need to be honest about that's the logic of capitalism is
Yeah.
that we don't have any fucking food, but we need a grocery store that's black owned to profit off of the fact that we don't have any food. Like that's a function of capitalism, and that's a policy choice that produces that, right? That's not a natural outcome. And I think sometimes people just think this just happens
Even
in the
if it
ether,
is,
you know.
even if it is a sense of like you said, the only option may be to open a grocery store. Okay, cool. So that's what we have to do. What are we doing to, circumvent that? Like for the next, for the community to,
Yeah,
like, what are we doing outside of that? Like
It's we
it
open a
don't make
grocery
it
store
don't like
while
if
we continue
it
to
doesn't make it
lobby.
doesn't make sense for it doesn't make sense for me to become a millionaire off of the backs of people because we had a food desert and
because they're
I just do a
hungry.
grocery
Yeah,
Yeah.
store
you
because
you
they're hungry.
became a
Like it doesn't make
billionaire
sense
because
for me to
people.
be a
Yeah,
millionaire because I made money off of them being hungry. Now, if I'm going to be making this money, what now that falls onto me and my morality of what am I doing?
it's not even just you. It's also again there
Well, I'm just saying, like
money.
I'm bringing it down to
No,
individualistic.
I'm
Just
just yeah. No, I agree. I'm saying, but I'm also saying like there is a policy to say that you can make endless money and get to $1 billion. It could simply just be taxed out. You could be taxed out of $1 billion, literally. Like it could just be capped
yeah,
out where people can't
Yeah.
even make that much. That actually even in the United States used to be a thing. You just got
yeah.
taxed out of it, and that money then got distributed elsewhere. So it's a since we're talking about tariffs and taxes, it's a tax policy to say that as you accumulate off all these people's hunger and all the labor that goes into it, that you can keep all that money. And it's
Yeah.
and it's capitalism that says you're the one that deserves all that money based on the labor of everybody that was involved in that. I'm just saying all this because a lot of people
You
think this
pulled
stuff is
yourself
like,
up by your
yeah,
bootstrap.
people think these things are like
Hmm.
natural. And I'm like, no, these are man-made choices that are part of the thing that we then think is like natural. So then we go out and stunt based on things that are not natural. They are man-made laws that we do not have to live by. This is just this thing that's been put in place. Like I just think
And if
that
you didn't work hard enough, and that's why you're poor.
yeah, yeah, like and
Not
so
because of the situations around me or what was going on. Yeah, I got
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Not
like
that there have been systems and policies in
mhm.
place to
Exactly.
ensure that a very small percentage of folks who play this game, so to speak, continue to be able to exploit the needs of the community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
That's one of the reasons why running a business, you can't divorce yourself from the politic, right? Um, there's so many black businesses that think they can just like this whole idea of I can find my liberation through black capitalism without even indulging in politics. Because everything is politics, from the
yeah,
way you get your goods, from the way that you provide your services, the way to keep your business operating. It's all politics. But
Yep.
it's like it said, this magical thinking that you can find your freedom, your liberation through this means that's already so heavily an integral part of the system, but also heavily regulated. I mean, you can't even like you got to get loans, you have to
yeah.
be able to yeah, all this
You
stuff.
got to get loans, you got to get investors, and those investors are likely
Investors.
not going to be niggas anyway. So it's
Hmm.
like there's all this stuff that goes into it, and it's again people enter into this like there's not a whole world set up. Like I remember before we get to some of this history, when Femi Tawa wrote Elite Capture, one of the things he talked about was a video game, and how you enter into a video game and people get caught up in like how they play the game, and this is what you need to do to beat this boss and da 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 da. But we
Not
automatically just
realizing there's a
accept.
whole world set up around it, and
Exactly.
somebody had to put those systems in place, and somebody
Exactly.
had to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you said it. Yeah, exactly. A whole world was built that you enter into, but you enter into it like it just sprung from the ground or something. And that's how people treat capitalism. Like these things just kind of grew out of the trees or something. Like these are just branches.
It's
It's
like
like,
it's like the Matrix. Like, oh, you just plugged into the Matrix, but you forget that the real world is out there, and there's actually machines and stuff that created these simulations and created all
yeah,
this and everything. To
yeah, they set the rules of the game, and so the game is skewed, to benefit a certain class of people. Like that's the game is skewed to benefit a certain race of people. Like that's the game, and people think you can enter a game that you don't set the rules and then beat and somehow like outplay that game. That's not how any game works. So so it's just like, So anyway, um, um. But anyway, like to give people a sense of just a little history, because there's a lot to get through here. So we want to just do a little bit of history, post World War II history. So y'all don't have to worry about us going back to like 19 or like 1770 something or like Rasul 1330 or whatever. Like we're not going to go all the way back to that. Those years
Shout out to
matter.
Rasul. He'd be thorough as hell.
Yeah, those years matter,
Taking it back to the origins,
yeah,
okay?
the origins of the origins, right? Like, but so we're not gonna go all the way back that far, but I do want to give people some context in terms of again, how did this world get built? So this is definitely not the entirety of that. This is not an exhaustive history, but this is somewhat. So after World War II, which I don't think people ever grapple with how like damaging World War II was. Like for instance, Russia alone lost I think 27 million people in that war, which I don't. It's hard to really fathom. Even when we're watching Gaza, and that's just Russia. I think China lost like 14 million, like hundreds of millions of people, like over 100 million people, I believe, were like just in one world war were killed. The United States was at a low number, and it was like 2 to 300,000, and that was considered a low number compared to other countries that were more involved in the war. So there was a lot of
Came
shit
in
that,
late on purpose. Like it's literally sat
yeah,
back, watched, and said, "Oh, I can come in now and play Super
and then
Joe."
took credit for
Took
shit
all the
that
credit.
the Soviet Union is really who killed off the Nazis and lost 27 million people in doing it. But
Yep.
they took credit for that too, and like we killed the Nazis, even though you actually brought Nazi doctors over here. Look up Operation Paperclip. But anyway,
Yeah.
so after
Like,
World War
what the
II,
little kitty say, clock it.
yeah. So after World War II, after World War II, America emerged, as a preeminent power. And this is me quoting from my own book here, because to save me time, of white capital producing over 50% of the world's gross domestic product. So we talked about gross domestic product earlier. So imagine one country at one point producing 50% of the world's gross domestic product. The United States no more is not even close to that anymore, right? Like it's way more well distributed. But that was the type of superiority in terms of economic power that the United States had come, because think about Europe is destroyed. Like, so they had to bail Europe out. The Soviet Union, which is their main competitor, is again lost 27 million people. Um, so had a civil war. Like they had they had civil war before that, a lot of things going on. So the United
Hmm.
States is standing at the top of the mountain, like pretty much like they
Exactly.
can dictate whatever 50% of the world's gross domestic product. That's wild.
Hmm.
Again,
It
we
wasn't
throw
off
around a
of
lot of
hard
numbers.
work. Yeah, it
Yeah,
wasn't off of hard work. It was just United States suffered the least amount of losses during World War II,
yeah,
as far as industrialized countries go, and they were able to take advantage of that power vacuum.
exactly. And like,
I said, we're
and
gonna meet up and figure this out, but we're gonna make sure we come out on top.
yeah, and again, United States didn't. The war wasn't fought in the United States either, so the land was intact. So in Europe, like not only was people like dying in the millions, but like the land's not intact. Like they're having wars over there, right? Like the land's not intact. So there's not like Japan. Remember, the United States dropped a whole bomb on them, so Japan was one of the preeminent
Two
powers.
of them.
just yeah, two, excuse me, like
Yeah.
wipe them
So,
off, wipe them out, right? So there's really not a lot of competition. The Soviet Union is the closest, and again, I'll keep saying they lost nearly 30 million people, which again, I don't think like it's just it's hard to reckon with that many people dying in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Um,
How many people are in New York?
about Cam used to live there. What is it, like 10?
5 to 8. What's the new numbers? I don't know.
Five
Folks
to eight
are
million.
being pushed out every
So like
day.
so
So
like three New
moving to
Yorks.
Three New
Jersey.
Yorks
yeah,
being
three
wiped
New
out.
York.
Like that's like somewhere in there, 3 to 4 New Yorks, depending on what the number is now. So it's like,
So
yeah,
that's three to four. That's three. That's we'll say 3 to 4 New Yorks on
I
top
mean,
of
Texas is 31 million people, so like that's almost the entire state of Texas gone.
yeah.
there you go. And then we know how big Texas is.
And I don't think people
Imagine
understand
if
even how big Texas really is. Like once you get down there,
like
it's like yeah,
imagine if just agriculturally you couldn't Texas is done. The land is over, done.
yeah. It's
That
just
might that would close to bankrupt the United States.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, it's just wild. So I'm
we'd be
saying
done for.
I mean, imagine Florida off the
So
map. Florida is what, the third largest state, has like 20 something million people. I'm not gonna
yeah,
pretend to know the exact number, but I know it's like over 20 million people. So, and people, anybody who's been to Florida, you know how packed Florida is. And so that's the entire state is now
it's
gone.
gone. And you
Not
got to and then you got to
people
keep
and
going.
land.
Yeah,
And
and to
figure
be
out
fair,
how to rebuild it.
the Soviet Union had a lot of there's a lot of motherfuckers in the Soviet Union once it was a big because you're not talking about just Russia, you're talking about again the entire Soviet Union. So but still, I don't care. That's just a lot of people, even for the world population, let alone a country, right? So this is VJ Prasad. He talks. So basically after this happened, this is like that's how you get the UN, United Nations. You get what's called the Bretton Woods Agreement, which we're going to get into, and the United States had the ability to dictate how the international financial system would be put in order. So this is the making of the rules of the game. So there was prior to that, you had European countries controlled their colonies. They were some of them had been already kind of ceding territory, like Spain, primarily giving away a lot of their countries, the formal, at least the formal colonies. But Britain up to this point was the preeminent superpower. The United Kingdom was the preeminent superpower. Um, so the United States takes over and these powers start giving away their colonies or not allowing their colonies to be quote unquote decolonized, seek some kind of independence, etc. So this is Vijay Bashad talking about, what happens post World War II. And he says it was clear that this was talking about the Conference of Bretton Woods, and Bretton Woods is in New Hampshire for the record. It's clear that this was not a conference of equals, but it was a meeting to dictate the terms of surrender. The future of Europe had to be settled first before the U.S. could tackle the rest of the world. Europe was not only bankrupt, but its various currencies had no value. Many of them had been yoked to the Nazi dollar. The United States pegged European currencies to the dollar, which was then pegged to the price of gold at the rate of $35 per ounce. Out of this conference came the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. Their purpose was to rebuild a destroyed world and to stabilize capitalist turbulence. So this is the Bretton Woods meeting that happens in 1944 in New Hampshire, Bretton Woods.
What's the
So
decline?
so some of the
Shout out to
some of the things that got put
Rashad.
in, yeah, shout out to VJ. Some of the things that got put in place, Europe primarily ceded all their colonial territories. Bretton Woods was also serves as a front to promote open markets and free trade. So we talked about that particularly, right? So again, used to be like if France owned their colonies, France made it where you couldn't just come in and take shit from their colonies in Africa or somewhere else. Same thing with Britain, same thing with other countries. Now it's like all these countries where we want to move our own countries as well as the other countries, we want to move them more towards free trade where we all can plunder however we want to plunder and we all can trade however we want to trade. They're also trying to prevent inter-imperialist wars because that's what causes World War One and two. Um, so meaning that so they removed all nationalistic policies that just allowed capital from entering territory. In layman terms, the former borders of colonialism were no longer relevant as U.S. capital wanted to equal access to the entire conquered world. So we talked about the dollar being pegged to, or the dollar being pegged as the international currency, and then that being pegged to the gold standard. So pegged is just to kind of give explanations of these things. This can get kind of technical. Um, from 1944 to 1920, 1971, most countries' central banks pegged their currency to US dollar. This meant they kept a fixed exchange rate between currencies dictated by the US. So even if your dollar was appreciating, you keep it depreciated so it stays at the rate that works with the United States. That's what meant pegging the dollar to it. So it's not based on a market fluctuation. If your dollars are actually, if you're doing better in trade, it's you keep a fixed exchange rate with the United States, and that's what all the countries mainly were doing because the economy had been
Basically,
destroyed.
so you kind of keep almost a 1-to-1 ratio.
Well, it's not a 1-to-1 ratio because it's like your dollar
Or
might be, let's say for every dollar here is 70 of your dollars. But your dollar could appreciate and maybe catch up with my dollar, or at least get closer, but you peg it to the US dollar so you can have more stabilized trade relations with them because
well,
people
that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm sorry, maybe 1-to-1 wasn't the best thing to say. So, just basically, you just keep it on par with whatever you're fixed on the dollar.
yeah, you're
So
fixed.
like you're fixed on the dollar. You're
So
like
it's like there's different ways that you can have what's called a floating currency. That means that
right,
your currency can appreciate or depreciate on its own merits. That means
right.
it's bought and sold and traded, and people can trade in your dollar or not on its own merits. But what folks did post Bretton Woods was it didn't float. It was just pegged directly to the United States dollar, and it was added a fixed, so it couldn't appreciate or really depreciate for the most part. So what you had, so it forced you to always have to purchase US dollars to trade. And that's why the United States can go into so much debt because people around the world trade in US dollars. They denominate in US dollars. Now this gets worse in the 70s,
Oh,
but
so it's
people
just it's setting it as a standard then.
yeah, it's the standard
Yeah,
trade currency that is then tied to gold. Right.
yeah,
So then gold is at every, so basically you could take, if you have US dollars, you could come to the United States during that time and buy gold with US dollars that could be backed up. So that's why it's like $35 per ounce. $35 of US dollars gets you an ounce of gold. And you can just kind of do
right.
the math. That's the conversion rate. So the exchange rate is like between countries. If a dollar here is $5 here, something like that. So they kept it
So that way, if
fixed.
you go into another country, you're trying to purchase gold, it's not going to be too far off. But
I mean, if you were,
we're still going off of we're going off of the dollar being the standard. So
yeah, and you have to, and based on that, you have to. What gave the United States advantage by pegging it to their dollar, you have to work basically your monetary kind of. You can't do it. You can't trot an independent path. You have to
right,
keep your dollar at a rate that agrees with whatever the United States wants. So the United States wants your dollar to be
Mm.
cheap. You need it to be cheap so they can buy shit from your country, right? Like you peg it to that. But people were doing it because the economy had been so destroyed with World War II. The idea was that the United States, like we said, owns 50% of gross domestic product. So it's the way to stabilize our money the best. That was the way it was sold. But over time, by 1971, the United States gets rid of the gold standard because it's going into debt. It's not able to print enough money to deal with the debt that's occurring mainly due to wars, such as the Vietnam War and such. So it takes itself off the gold standard, and so it has the ability to print more money, but to so it doesn't totally, even though there was a major inflation crisis in the mid 70s into the 80s, so it doesn't totally just have hyperinflation. It has it's some of the things that happened was like basically the petrodollar, where everybody trades like when Saudi Arabia was selling oil, for instance, they made an agreement with the United States that oil had to be bought in US dollars. So what this means is anybody wants to buy oil, have everybody around the world has to have US dollars in their central banks. Therefore, the United States can print all this money all the time because everybody is paying for their debt across the world. Other countries cannot do this because everybody doesn't carry their dollars. So if Terrell was
Right.
like, I'm just going to start printing a bunch of money, it's not going to be worth anything.
That's not gonna work. It's not
Yeah.
gonna, and
But
then
if every,
wouldn't that actually that would actually fuck up my economy. Like that
yeah,
would
yeah,
fuck up my shit wouldn't be worth nothing.
yeah,
Yeah.
you would
You'd be
just totally,
spending all kinds of goods, print the money from the
But
paper to the ink, and then
Because the US set the
yeah,
standard, you can
yeah,
print that money and it's
yeah.
gonna hold up. Yeah.
mm,
Everybody's got to carry it in their reserves. So people that are, so even if, let's say I'm India and Terrell is Cambodia and you want to buy oil from me, you still got to buy that. You still are likely going to be buying that in American dollars, even though America is not involved.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what happens when everybody's carrying the dollar. It gives the United States an ability to just, go
Dominate.
crazy because everybody's got to run with it. And that's why the United States can just print money out of the blue, even if it's not really based on anything, because it's based on the fact that the rest of the world carries your currency. So what's happening now, part of these tariffs and part of why Trump and them is wilding out, is countries are starting to get tired of that shit. So like BRICS and things like that, that stands for Brazil, Russia,
Brazil, Russia,
India, China, and
India,
South
yeah.
Africa. Um, the BRICS was like, okay, we're trying to create alternatives because what this also allows the United States to do is sanction the fuck out of people. They own all the international banks and stuff, so they can just freeze your assets, right? So it's like, so it gives the United States unprecedented power, and that's what we get what's called exorbitant privilege of the U.S. dollar. This requires countries to have massive amounts of U.S. dollars in their reserves. This allows the U.S. exorbitant privilege to print their own money, to go into debt and then sanction the rest of the world if they don't abide by their rules. This is what Trump is trying to do. But the downside for the United States now is by doing that, by sanctioning people, by saying we're going to tariff you if you don't go with us. Like they just with India, they tariffed India because India was buying oil from Russia, and they were like, well, you can't, we were trying to end the Ukraine war, so to speak. So you can't do that. It's called a secondary sanction. And India was like, basically, fuck you. Like,
So
we're
I can do
not,
what the fuck I want.
yeah. So, so India had a decent relationship with the United States. So what Trump's doing is pushing a lot of these people towards China, towards Russia. And that's what we call like multipolarity, where there's different poles of power and it's not just unipolar where one country has all the power. And that was what the United States was trying to do. And once the Soviet Union collapsed in the 90s, the United States really thought they could go crazy because there was no competition. And this is part of what their heads got too big, and here we are. So that's the international financial system, just to give people a little bit of a breakdown. And I know people are like, what does this have to do with black business? If you can't think of what black business has to do with this is exactly our point. Because it's just like,
They're not in the game at
No,
yeah,
I
all.
was
at all.
that's I was about to ask the question, like, just to, devil's advocate, like, like what does that have to do with us black business? And then you already said it, like, okay, we're not invited to those conversations. That's what the issue
yeah.
is.
I
Also,
mean, I didn't learn this stuff until I did start getting into socialism and stuff. I didn't even none of this stuff was even I mean, I heard a little bit about the gold standard, but even that was just little rantings I'd hear around here and there. But all of this stuff about the international currency and the United States having that kind of power,
Bro, the
you
most we
know.
knew about the gold standard was when we was taken off of it, and that was social studies, what, seventh, eighth grade?
And they never explained this shit,
They
No,
never
hell no.
explained it for real. Like,
you know. So it's
So,
just like,
question, real quick, because I know you said in the '90s, this fall of the Soviet Union, they said United States started going crazy. Is that why there's such an economic like bubble and such a boom in the '90s and then a fall off?
yeah, because I mean, you got also in the 90s you get NAFTA, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
NAFTA is this agreement between Mexico and Canada to again, it was a free trade agreement. So it was like, so Mexico had their own industries, and it was like, okay, now you need to weaken those, like take those tariffs out and allow United States companies to go into it. So that's why Walmart is now the biggest retailer in Mexico. But then that's also, it was also auto manufacturing jobs. That's where a lot of those jobs went for the people, especially for those of us in the Midwest. a lot of those jobs went to Mexico. But then a lot of Mexicans lost a lot of jobs too. Everybody acts like all those jobs went there and just benefited them. But this
No,
was also corporations could find cheap labor
could
to,
exploit
make,
it.
yeah, so they can make their money at the expense of others. And they'll tell us that it diversifies. So yeah, like you said, Ryan, there was a boom, but you do start seeing more boom bust. And also the United States had used to have to put on some kind of front because they didn't want countries to go with the Soviet Union. So that's why you got some of these more social democratic reforms, welfares and things like that, some healthcare, because you had to compete with the Soviet Union. Once they fell, there is no competition. Now China's competition in a different kind of way, right? But China's competition, but the United States has not really figured out how to compete. So Trump's over here just slapping tariffs on people, trying to get them to turn away from China, even though he's scared to actually keep his tariffs on China because he understands that, well, China's basically got the United
Ruin
States
the
by the balls.
country.
Yeah. so 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 I'm saying
Well,
this is the system that gets set up that black businesses are entering into and talking about shit like circulating dollar and all of that we haven't even touched on yet, but this is the situation that's set up. And but when you go to your standard black financial literacy, you don't learn none of this shit.
And there's never a conversation of like how your black business even exists within the global economy
Yeah.
like everybody else.
No.
Like you still play a role in that and you're still impacted by it, but many folks have no understanding of one, how, why, and then what the larger impact is. And as we can see right now, with tariffs hitting, you can't produce you have no goods either because you weren't producing most of this yourself and or the material all the materials you need to produce things for your business are coming from other places, and so you're double impacted. You're impacted by the ways in which white supremacy is aiming to make sure you fail to begin with, and then on top of that you're still going to be impacted by the ways in which the global economy is working right now
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like,
without the same safe holds and
yeah.
outs that white businesses would have and understand how to
Yeah.
utilize.
You could think of it as they say, the black tax is just another tax, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean, and it's like there's businesses. There was one in New Orleans. Just to get people, again, these are real stories. She estimated roughly 2/3 of her products were produced. This is Vera Warren Williams in New Orleans. She has a community bookstore. We were talking about bookstores. She estimated 2/3 of her products were produced outside the U.S., which she expected would lead to increased costs for her business. And because she caters towards black customers who have lower disposable incomes, who will need to spend their money on essentials like foods over books, and corporate clients have stopped buying as many black books because of attacks on DEI and black history, her sales will dwindle. You know, so again, we're gonna get to like the supply chain side of this to really explain like why black businesses are affected. Because a lot of the problem is that black businesses are at the very end of at the very end of like commerce and how businesses work. So things happen a lot before you get to a bookstore. A lot of shit goes
Yeah.
down in terms of
Yeah.
just like means of production and just production in general. A lot of things go down before you get to a bookstore. So you can't compete if most of the time, even when we talk about black businesses, we're promoting people on the retail side of things. We're rarely ever telling folks to get into the game of like, you know, shipping or something, right? Like we're never,
The actual production. And
yeah,
if so,
like,
folks are just talking about buy you a rig,
yeah,
but not actually being like, hey, maybe you should become a brick maker, actually.
yeah.
So when we want to buy land and build houses on it, we can come to you for the bricks for our housing, or you have a multiple have like a full scale farm, not the little garden that most of us got in our backyards, but then we can actually buy our groceries from you. But then still, like, do y'all who owns a factory that
Yeah,
is
most
producing
of that stuff is,
plastic?
yeah, most of that stuff's bought up,
For
right? Like, so we are forced
I mean, to
into
be to
the
be
retail side of it most of the time.
to be quite honest, we haven't made it past the part of just having a actual. I don't want to use the word self-sufficient because we know what that means. We haven't reached that part of even just having our own our own spaces like that without you know
There
like
isn't
for example,
sovereignty in it though, and like capitalism as a whole doesn't operate in that space. Even
yeah, it
China being
doesn't.
such a
Like,
power that it is when it comes to owning a large portion of the means of production of the goods that they create, they don't function without trade. And so I think that's also something that we've talked about previously.
That's globalization, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like you can't function without both pieces of this. And I think that also still gets lost in the conversation of like, okay, even if you did own all the means of production and you made all these goods, now what?
Yeah. So, you know, we really could stop here, honestly. But so the piece. Oh, the piece deals with two myths that we've covered in some ways on this show. One, we did a whole episode on the circulating black dollar, and black buying power, but from the perspective of trade, not just the kind of just basic, you know, myths around it that we will also discuss, but we don't want to spend as much time on that. So, you know, if you want to get deeper into that, I would just, so for the sake of time, I would say refer back to it. We did an episode on the circulating black dollars. I'm gonna shoot through a lot of this pretty quickly to get to the parts about trade because that's what's more important here. So
Like check out that episode and then
yeah,
also check out the research notes that we left under it. Like
In a nutshell, the black dollar is not circulating in the black community for anywhere.
it's not a
Okay.
fucking thing.
It's
John Ray
not.
it's not a thing. So the myth itself,
Not
I'll
a
at least
thing.
state that is that this originally came from a book, Talking Dollars and Making Sense. Like I said on the original episode, it didn't
And it doesn't
either.
either.
Yeah,
Jinx.
but um, wealth building guide to African Americans. So this claim, that you've probably, a lot of people have never maybe heard this claim, but we've all heard some version. We got to circulate our dollar within our community and all that. And again, it comes from a
it stays in their community.
yeah,
They
yeah,
keep their money.
yeah,
Bro, it was literally on our radio stations
yeah.
here in town in
Oh yeah.
Indianapolis. It was on. Yeah, yeah.
And that's where you really get to hear it is on the local level. Like that's where you're gonna hear a lot of this shit. And you're gonna hear it, like I said in the piece, you're gonna hear it at a random barbershop, at a random party. You're gonna hear somebody say, so even if they don't know what we're about to read, the actual quote, there's some version of this that's triculated down to folks. So the actual thing where this claim originates, an economic development specialist, John Ray, an economic development specialist in Washington, D.C., did a study that traced the flow of dollars through comparative ethnic communities. Ray found that in the Asian community, a dollar circulates among the community's banks, brokers, shopkeepers, and business professionals for up to 28 days before it's spent with outsiders. In the Jewish community, the circulation period was 19 days. In the WASP community, which I always found, WASP stands for White Anglo-Saxon Protestants, so I don't know what white Catholics do. The dollar circulates for 17 days, but in the African community, it's only 6 hours. So we've all heard this. And like I said on Dr. Ball's show, the interesting part about these claims is niggas will say this shit at an event where people are circulating the dollar anyway. They'll say it at some black business event, they'll say it at a party, they'll say it at a black party, they'll say it at something where black people are spending money with other black people, but there's always this claim that we don't support each other as you say it at your black church or whatever. Like it's an interesting conundrum that we find ourselves in. So very quickly, that study is not real. She offers no citation, and people have looked into it. They can't find anything. I'll just leave it at that. There's no basis for
They
it.
pulled
She
it
made
out her
that shit up
ass.
out of yeah. It's just, there's no
You don't
there's no
you don't
basis for it.
support you don't support black businesses.
Okay,
But here's the
that fake
change.
ass claim came from the same bullshit ass place that people said don't cry over spilled milk because those folks have never spilled 8 ounces of breast milk on the ground because I sure as hell did cry.
Damn.
Oh, I about got cussed out about it.
Yeah, that's hard earned milk, man. Like you know, it's just,
Bro, when I tell you when you spill a cup of breast milk, bro, you will fear for your life.
yeah, that's hard earned milk. There is no Asian community, which, like she says, there's Chinese people, there's Japanese, Vietnamese, there's Indians. There's a bunch of other people from Asia, and like we talked about, in Japan colonized half of these groups anyway. So
You mean you can't
Even
go
in, even
find
in
them all in
the
one place?
no,
Oh, you cannot.
even in
People live in
the
their own areas.
even in the quote unquote Chinese, isn't there a different sex there too?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't. There's
Like
that
it
different.
doesn't,
There's
and
entirely
some of them
different.
don't.
There's different ethnic groups under that banner. If you actually go to the country, or even
Yeah,
some of them move over here.
they
Again,
don't.
people
Some don't fuck
see
with each other
people
too.
see a Chinatown in a few cities, or they see, they
Yeah.
see a Korean town, and they make
Yeah.
all these assumptions without, understand they have their own problems and class
Hmm.
dynamics and poverty and class stratification, and everything else too. And also, just to add it, I know we didn't talk about this in the last episode when we did this, but like even when these immigrants come over here, they're not just coming over here with there's this story they come over here with no money and they built something from scratch. But it was a
That's not
study.
always true.
Yeah, like Korean business. This was Earl Hutchinson and the continuing myth of black capitalism actually is the name of the piece. And he says a study of Korean small business in Atlanta in 1984 found that 79% were able to secure loans or credit from banks. Many of the merchants that operated successful businesses in Korea and were highly trained in management and retailing and had strong family business ties. So these folks don't just roll over here off a boat out of nowhere and figure this shit out. And the government here allowed the government from Korea, and this is primarily South Korea, to invest money over here so they could relocate. With Vietnamese, because the United States hated communism so much, they would relocate people from Vietnam, South Vietnam, in trades and such, so they didn't get hit by terrorism, and they actually poured millions into their resettlement programs. This is the same thing happened for Cubans. That's why some of the worst Cubans you ever meet are in Florida because they were resettled and they were the bourgeoisie out of Cuba when the Castro's revolution popped off, and they were again subsidized by the government. So this idea that
They
these
came
folks
over.
Hmm.
just say what?
They came over with a package basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think another way, y'all know I love to just pull a pop culture reference in because most people have seen these things, is like for a lot of people who saw Sinners, a huge part of this was the Chinese grocery store. And one of the beautiful things about that film was just how much research was actually done in it and how many
Was it
people,
Chinese or Filipino? I can't remember.
I think they
They were
were
Chinese.
they were
Okay, okay,
Chinese.
okay, okay.
Um,
Mhm.
but they talked about this very thing. In a lot of
Yep.
the post movie documentaries that came out talked about how in a large majority of across the South at the time, we saw all of these grocery stores and other businesses pop up from various Asian communities because they were able to actually have the capital to do so. And they
Yep.
still had to be within lower income neighborhoods because they may have had the capital and the ability to secure the loans to open these stores, but they were still then being faced with racism from whites at the same
Yeah,
time. And so
Yep.
it is there even then it's still not a model minority. Like they were still ostracized, still being targeted and attacked. And for many of them, one of two things had to take place. Either they had to sequester themselves into smaller communities, now what we know as like the Chinatowns, the Japantowns,
Hmm.
et cetera, or they integrated themselves within our communities and Hispanic communities with the capital and the access that they had from having money, from already coming with degrees and other and having owned businesses before and having the knowledge of how to run these in their own countries, plus having a package, as Rel just said, and then establishing themselves here in our communities to be able to serve
Hmm.
in a space that benefited both. Because
Why
they
Yeah.
why can't we
went
do the
in
same? Why can't we
white
do the
neighborhoods.
same thing? Why can't we do the same thing? Like again, I used to be there, so that's why I try to have some sympathy. Because I mean, I understand why people ask that question. If you look around and you see people that look like they're organized around some kind of sustainability, and it's like, well, why don't we have that? I get it, but it's not. Again, this stuff doesn't grow out of the ground,
Yeah.
and I think
No.
that's what people got to understand. This stuff doesn't just grow out of the ground randomly due to the weather or something like this. These are policies and choices that are put in place. It's not because black people are just the most backwards, lazy, or any of that. Now, the deal with the claim
Hmm.
itself, I mean, we can talk about how white folks and Jews are at this point is not much of a distinction. The 92% of Jews identify as American Jews identify as white and such. And the idea and the claim of WASP was just a weird thing. As I noted in the piece, the so-called white Anglo-Saxon white folks, Protestants, and Jews seem to be, or excuse me, Zionist Israeli Jews seem to be collaborating pretty good. Seem to be collaborating pretty good, with the whole genocide happening in Gaza. So I don't really know if those communities are distinct as they make them seem. But the actual claim of like dollars circulating is just not. That's not like the dollar circulates. This one, it doesn't make any sense as we talked about in the first episode. The dollar is not stuck in a community for 28 days or whatever. So I'm gonna just read from the article something that I think will kind of simplify this without me having a rant. Um, it's this, and shout out to Jay for kind of like, like he made this a kind of a bullet point in the piece. Um, the supply chain simplified. He said, and so it's to illustrate the point, say I need shrimp, tomato, and avocado for a dish. Whether I go to a black-owned grocery store or a WASP-owned Walmart, these commodities are not grown in the store's backlots. They're imported. It's more likely they were shipped from India and Mexico than the U.S. And this is actually true when you look at where shrimp, tomatoes, and avocado come from. Tomatoes and or shrimp comes primarily is coming out of India, tomatoes too, and then avocado is going to come out of Mexico. Um, Regardless of whether I bought them at a black business or not. So they are shipped from somewhere else, even if it's a black owned business or it's owned by some white Anglo-Saxon crackers, right? Like either way. Hence, nobody's dollar stays in their community for 28, 19, or 70 days. Instead, a portion of the dollar leaves the neighborhood almost instantly to pay for the entire supply chain that brought it to the shelf. Because again, if the dollar just stays in a community, you can't pay for the shit to bring it into the community. So dollars don't stay in communities; they circulate in and out of communities. Like that's circulation is just the international
Also, I think
financial.
we made that point on the other video. Like, if the dollar just stayed in one community, then the community would be lacking.
It would
Like, they
cease to
just
exist,
they,
probably.
And it
More
it
also
ceased
likely.
to exist. They wouldn't like they wouldn't have what they need because
nah.
it stayed in
Hmm.
one community.
And what is it? It doesn't make sense for if you live on like we live in the same city. Like if you live on the east side, I live on the north side or the west side, and you grow everything you need in your side and everything I need on my side. Where even if we were able to somehow acquire the land and all of that, which is a whole other conversation, and the resources to do it, it would just be overproduction. We would have a bunch of food that we wouldn't need. We would have if we try to make everything food, clothes, shelter, everything. It's like no, that's trade is actually a totally fine thing. It's just under capitalism it gets messed up, but it makes sense. People trade on an individual level all the time, right?
Hmm.
Like I mean, let's just use us as an example. I have the youngest son. I didn't buy all the clothes my son wears. Y'all got older kids, so where a lot of his clothes come from? You know what I mean? Like,
So we didn't own the means to productions for none of that
yeah.
either.
So it's like we traded in that sense, right? It was done in a communal level, but I'm just saying, like, I don't, why go out and buy all that when, when there are clothes available, right? Like that was just a common sense thing. It seems small, but I'm saying that's the concept of trade is like, I don't have to do all this because it's somebody else already got it. How do I get it from them? Right? Like it's a simple, and then, okay, if I got
Yeah,
something, I could pay it back, but like, it's not, so you don't want to
he
do
got lucky.
everything.
He got you lucky having the
I
youngest one.
did. Yeah. So it's like,
I gotta go shopping for my son this weekend.
hey, that's trade,
But
bro.
whatever he don't fit,
Yeah,
just go ahead and pass that down to his big
Yeah.
cousin, big
I
little
mean,
cousin.
yeah,
even if, for instance, we were like, let's kick in, let's subsidize Terrell because
Yeah.
Terrell's gonna go get all the clothes that we gonna eventually wear, like or our kids will eventually wear. Like, all right, that's still a form of trade. That's a kind of like inner communal governance thing, right? But like
Hmm.
you do
yeah.
that because you understand me as an individual. I cannot produce everything that I need. I cannot obtain everything that I need. So that same thing with countries, with communities, they cannot produce and obtain everything that they need. And it would be asinine to expect them to do that. And that's not even a matter of sovereignty. Like you
Well,
can be sovereign and
Yeah.
still trade.
quick question. What do you say when granted, I don't have an example of this. What do you say when black businesses do that when it comes to services and stuff? Like you said, um, since I have the oldest child, for example,
Hmm.
I go out, I go buy the clothes, and you know, once he grows out of them, it goes down to Cam, then it goes to Black and everything. For black businesses that are, I said I don't have an example because I don't know any that are actually doing stuff like that. How would that work on that level with them?
How
So
would
that's like if a restaurant, so for example, if a bakery, I'm saying this because I worked at Panera Bread for all of college. So at the end of every day, Panera Bread gives all of the baked goods that were not sold and they donate them to a shelter of sorts, right? It sounds really great on paper. It's very sweet. They also get a tax write-off for that. And so one of two things it could exist in the same capacity, right? Like if Ryan, what being our child-free cousin right now, if he was like, "Oh my goodness, I got all this money and I just need to do something with it because it's almost the end of the year and I just know the taxes are going to hit me." And he was like, "Let me go give some of that to my child stressed out friends and
Spread the wealth. Yeah.
spread the wealth," right?
Help
He could
me,
choose to
nigga.
do so out of the kindness of his heart because he wants to support his pod community. But as a business owner, a large majority of them are doing so because they are getting a kickback from the government. They get to write that off and say,
Hmm.
I get to now take a loss. I'm taking a loss because if I didn't sell these goods and now I need to give them, if I don't do something with this, I just take my loss. And but now I get to do twofold. I get to mark the actual amount of money that I'm losing by not selling these goods as a loss, and I'm getting a kickback for donating it essentially to charity.
Yep. I'm taking a
So
loss. Fuck with all you
they're
niggas.
still getting to operate from a space within capitalism because we talked about all these policies that have been created to ensure that those with money um, get to keep their money
yeah,
Hmm.
and the
while being
goal
under the facade that they're doing
of
something
yeah,
good.
charity. The goal is to incentivize it,
Hmm.
based on that. But yeah, then that can create a lot of fraud, honestly, when folks know they can write shit off. So
A
Exactly.
lot of
So by
these
um
black
me helping
business
you, you're
Yeah.
also helping
a
me.
lot of these black business like webinars and how to get rich and how to be a business owner thing, a lot of what they're teaching you is how to scam the government. They're teaching you
that's all
how to make it
LLC.
LL. We saw this during
You
COVID, and listen, I ain't mad at y'all
let me ask you this
playing
then.
playing the game. But when we saw people getting those PPP loans, a lot of people were on TikTok just teaching folks how to commit fraud.
Yep.
How to commit fraud,
Let me
Yep.
how to
let
create
me
businesses
My father
and
definitely
then
came to
write
me
it
and was
all
like,
off.
"Hey." Well, definitely
look.
came
No,
to
I
me and was
wouldn't.
like, "Hey."
Yeah,
I
I don't
told
be
some
mad
I
at
folks
found a
like,
people.
bro,
loophole, and I
leave
was
it
like,
alone, leave it alone, leave it alone, bro.
But and while
"Nothing
I
happened."
got no issue with people scamming this government that scams us and fucks us over every
Yeah,
second of
that
the
is
day,
just but
at
don't
its
but then you
core,
start scamming your own people,
yep.
that
But
that
at its
Yeah,
core, just the thought that there were all these things already existed for those that are wealthy and with power to be able to operate at a loss and still make money and exploit people in the same breath. The fact that Amazon can outsell bookstores because they can buy in these large quantities, and it doesn't matter if they sell them at for pennies on the dollar because their goal is twofold: to A, knock out the competition, and B, they have to, because they make so much money, reduce their taxes by having losses in some way, shape, or form.
yeah, I mean,
When
here's
the grocery
a
store keep asking you to roll over your 10 cents every 5 seconds for a charity for some big organization is running, those folks are literally saying, I'm gonna I'm gonna ask y'all folks for money to then write a large check from my business for
yep.
charity to get a tax write-off.
yeah, this is
So
why
don't feel bad when you hit no to that donation.
And I didn't
I
even
never do.
know.
Don't
No.
feel bad.
And that's a whole other thing. Is I think if
No, no,
I
that's
was
what
thinking about this
we
the
can
other
really do
day.
some
Like,
other stuff with.
what if like when you're at a gas station, they're like, do you want to round up? And I'm always like, no, I don't care.
No.
You can put me as many the children's thing on. I'm not rounding up. But like, what if that shit was connected to like more local shit and you could round up to give to an
Yep.
organization or something like that's the
Hmm.
kind of stuff that I think would be useful. On the screen is USDA created this called estimated industry cost contribution to retail price of food. This is as of 2021. So this has probably changed a bit, but it gives you a sense of, again, folks want to talk about the dollar circulation. This literally breaks down a dollar. So when you spend a dollar at a grocery store, this is a sense of the distribution of where that dollar goes And I know everybody's, some people are listening on audio, so I'm going to give everybody a breakdown. So you have $1 and it's breaking down percent of with each part of the supply chain. So you have advertising, 2.6 cents goes to advertising, 4 cents goes to packaging, 4.4 cents goes to energy, 5 cents goes to agribusiness, 5 cents goes to transportation to even get it from one site to another. Farm production is 14 cents. Wholesale trade is 14.7 cents. Food processing is another 24.6 cents. Retail trade 19 cents. Finance and insurance 3.2 cents. Legal and accounting 1.5 cents. Food services zero point 0.5 cents. Food services is likely where people are being paid at the store. That's the, and then retail trade as well. So it's like, this is a breakdown. Again, if you're listening to this on audio, it's just $1 chopped up into the different sections that go to all the things that produce the food at the grocery store. So again, wholesale trade, farm production, food processing, transportation, energy, packaging, advertising, etc. All that goes into the dollar. So if you're going to
It
start
makes no
talking about
sense.
circulating $1, you would have to, like we talked about in the last episode, you'd have to own all these different means of production that produces the food on the shelf. If you're just talking about having a black-owned grocery store, unless all these other things are black, you do not circulate the dollar in the community or whatever, right? Like it's not how this works. So again, we're
Mm-hmm.
not trying to discourage folks, but we need to have a real, sober analysis of how money is actually circulated. You know, like, well, you want to say something, Terrell? I'm sorry.
No, I was literally trying to figure out where the black dollar would even fit in on this.
Well, I'm
Like, and I'm
saying
I'm
you
I'm
come.
literally like,
This is
and no,
when
I'm not.
the dollar.
Like,
Here's
I
the.
get it. I'm just confused. I'm just
Well,
like
the thing is,
confused with the argument they're making. Like,
the dollar
black
would
dollar.
be us. The thing is, the dollar just doesn't go back to us necessarily. So the dollar
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
in this
Like,
whole chart would
I
be
don't.
us. Like I go and get some chicken wings, but this is where the money for my chicken wings go.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, like I go and get, so I want a steak today. This is where my money goes. It goes to food processing.
but
All of that
that's
shit
that,
has to
that
be
brings me
paid
back to
for.
the point. Like, the dollar would have to circulate outside of the community to do anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the way things work. So that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
it's not but I think this is even more precise than what we had in the last episode because it gives people a sense of just that's how your dollar gets broken down. That was as of 2021. So again, this is quoted in the piece. No amount of financial literacy or buying black can overcome where items are shipped from. This is proven whether it's the sew and weave shaved off the heads of poor women in Cambodia, which if people, I won't get into that for the sake of time, but if people want to read the article, that's a pretty sad story about the hair that little girls had to sell in Cambodia, only to be sold to black-owned hair salon. The cheap clothing developed in Bangladesh, now for sale to
Mm-hmm.
black-owned fashion store. The copper made in China, deployed by the black-owned electrician firm. The white liquor containing a fermentable sugar source from Brazil, now sipped at the black-owned bar. So if black folks want to be honest, like you want to have a cut of this, you want to be a player in this game, I understand that. At least that's realistic in terms of just like being sober about what you're doing. But this idea that you can somehow, eclipse this is just not like things come from places. We're going to
So
get in the next section, we're going to get into like the supply chain of things, but like things come from places, man. And they don't all come from the same place. They don't all come from your
Not
backyard.
all, a lot of it comes with harm at the same
Yeah.
breath. Like there's no morality in capitalism.
None
so
whatsoever.
I might be jumping the gun here, but that will bring in my next question as far as like, why are we being relegated to the kitty table and everything? Is it a thing of we're doing this to ourselves because, ignorance, or willful ignorance, which you know how that goes? Like, why, like, Am I jumping the gun there, or
No,
is that
it's a good time because we were gonna then the next we'll get to Black Buying Power, which I think we can swoop through even faster. But like,
yeah?
um, but no, I mean I think there's different reasons for it. I don't think there's one explanation. I think in general, black folks are just not taken seriously, and that is a symptom of white supremacy. We're just not taken seriously intellectually in any field.
Mm-hmm.
We are relegated to the kids' corners in a lot of shit. I think DEI was an expression of kids' cornerism, right? We are relegated to the kids' corner. So what it ends up doing is even when we're talking about trade, like we're not people don't trade with us on just a basic level. It's like we are kind of pegged to like the kids' corner things, to the smaller
Because
things.
even when we do, and I don't want to say like not everyone understands it, because a lot of us do get it and we know what the situation is, but I feel like some of us, like what you said earlier, like we get relegated to that kiddie space or whatever, because it's like, oh well, the adults are talking nigga.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
get
And then that nigga is the exclamation part. Hey, look,
I think
the
it's
adults
also
are talking
it's a
nigga.
lot of propaganda is pushed in that capacity, right? Like
That's yeah.
we hear people say buy black, not just from black folks, from whites. We see it be incentivized that there are loans, and even though there's still a ton of roadblocks that prevent a large majority of folks who may want to go into entrepreneurship from opening their black businesses, there still is in the same breath a lot of spaces in which white supremacy benefits from us playing a part of their game. And so that while there is a notion of overall ignorance of Black people, I think, like I said earlier, like there was a need for us to have businesses from the beginning of time, right? And I think a lot of times that the narrative got pushed, and we really addressed this when we talked about Black Wall Street. Um, Once we saw the impacts of integration, everybody has talked about MLK saying, integration was us going into a burning house, and how it actually was far more detrimental. We lost so much, at least moral sovereignty, even though we
yeah.
never physically had it, that there was this push to bring that back. And so when folks, and I think that is where folks get things twisted,
Hmm.
is this notion of buying black. I think a lot of folks think we're actually striving for liberation. And in reality, we're aiming to gather a sense of pride again. And that is okay. And I think if folks can acknowledge that, and the truth in that, of like there is a very beautiful part to be able to say, like, I want to support my people. I want to know that if I'm gonna buy my glasses, my earrings, my shirts, my clothes, whatever, all of the things that allow me, black laundry detergent, water, from et cetera, that you want to be able to state that the things in your home come from black people, and you're supporting them, and with the thought that they are then pouring that money back into our community. The thought of the circulating black dollar is not a problem. The notion of us wanting to have a sense of community strength in supporting one another is not inherently a problem. The problem is where both propaganda from white supremacy is coming in on one ear, and sometimes I think willful ignorance, as well as programmatic ignorance, comes in and has us believing that this is how we get free, and
Hmm.
it's not. And
Hey,
I
hey,
and
real quick,
that is where the issue
Real quick,
is.
wait. Hold your
define
thought, Terrell.
programmatic. Define what was that word? Programmatic.
I don't know what I said. I got mom brain.
I'm fucking. I'm
Hmm.
fucking.
The moment it came out of my
It
mouth, it was
was a big
gone.
word.
So,
It was a big.
it's a
It
big
was a
word for
big word. I was
Elmo.
like,
It's a
But
big word for
Yeah,
Elmo.
I would
but
say
Don't know what I just said.
yeah, but
it was a
to
big word. I
basically
was
to
like,
your point.
if you don't stop snapping.
Real.
Mhm. And to your point, Cam, with propaganda, the state also has an invested interest in keeping us from looking at this stuff and then really combing through it and researching it. Because this is where actual power comes in, right? If you understand this stuff and how to create a political objective around this and how do we fight back toward that propaganda.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why I feel like we are relegated to the kiddie table, because if we really paid attention to all this information properly and form an actual strategy and tactic around this, then I mean will be threatening to the state, you know? So
So then they'll be looking around like, hey, who gave these niggas books to read?
yeah, and it's also
basically,
like I mean, to be fair, because I don't want to do
Mhm.
what I'm accusing a lot of these niggas of doing. Most white folks don't know this shit either.
Yeah.
Let's just be
No,
honest. Like,
they
so
don't.
let's clarify that. But like,
No, that's
I'm
fair. That's
saying,
fair.
like that, it's like most people in general don't know how the means of production work. The
Mm,
difference with us, even like our so-called top end is still relegated to the kids' corner, right? So even our
mhm,
best and brightest are supposed to just talk about buying black and these
mhm,
like really joke like scenarios, as
Mhm.
opposed to when white folks, when they reach the top, they do get into like they do get invited into these rooms. The black
mhm,
folks that get invited to these rooms, and this is where the class component comes in, is like for them to remain relevant in those rooms, they have to push this kids corner shit
mhm,
because they're in the kids corner in those rooms. And then
So that's where
when they get sent
mhm,
out to us, even if they are the CEO of of the white company or whatever, for them to really remain relevant to our communities, they have to push the kids corner shit. That's how
mhm,
they
that's where
make
we
their
get
money.
the
You know
mhm.
what I
that's where
mean?
we get the
So
killer
Jay-Z
Mike
has to
conversations.
say what?
I said that's where we get the killer Mike conversations, and like you
Yeah.
said, Jay
Yeah.
Mhm.
Z and
Yeah, they
Ti at one point. Even I
yeah.
love Ti too, man.
Ti is still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
love all three of them in terms of their music. I love all three of them. Like,
yeah,
like I ain't gonna hold you, but I'm just saying, like, that's how they make their money. Like Beyonce, I know Cam just signed off for a second, but Beyonce has to push Americana and
Mhm.
all of that. That's how they make their money. I mean, let's just be honest about it. So, like
Yeah.
Dr. Ball talks about in the Black Buying Power section, I didn't put it in our outline, but like the whole that video, the selling of the Negro and how the owner of Ebony magazine he wanted to get white ad dollars, so he had to
Mhm.
present the black buying power
yeah.
narrative to white advertisers that black people are respectable and we have money and you should invest in our magazine because that's how they make their money. He's not going to make his money off of just black people buying his
Exactly.
magazine. He needs those advertisement dollars to make that money. That's just the economic model that most black capitalists have to follow, is
Mhm.
that
Hell,
liberation is
didn't
a
Cadillac
grift.
do the same shit?
Say what?
I said, didn't Cadillac do something similar to that? Like they figured out, oh shit, these black people actually got
I
money to
mean,
spend. You
yeah, yeah, but
know,
most car
we're gonna
companies,
advertise to them. We're gonna make sure.
mhm,
Yeah, and it's like so
most car companies dip
people
into
confuse
that too.
advertisement with economics. So like that's what
Mhm.
Dr. Ball's point is about black buying power is like this is an advertisement media propaganda, like Cam said, that is then being converted over to a serious economic assessment of a community.
Also made up.
that is the flip. That's how they get you. But so I'm saying a lot of black elites have invested interest in selling this shit to us, and then some of them buy into the kind of prosperity gospel of it, and it becomes almost evangelical. Like, oh, I gotta go tell Terrell about all this financial literacy that I know, and I gotta give you game so you can make money too. So a lot of them, some of them just actually I think buy into it, but all of those things have the effect of relegating you to the kids' corner because none of these people are actually explaining to you how the world functions. So
Right.
it's like none of them ever actually tell you that because it's in their vested interest to keep you limited to the kids'
Exactly.
corner. It works
Like,
for
hey, let me
the white folks
tell
benefit
you how
off
to.
of it.
And then
The
that, mhm,
It's like, hey, let me tell you how to set up a t-shirt business, but now I'm not going to tell you about, the supply of it, the market,
yep.
as
And
far
then
as
at
the
the end
and
of the day,
even
market when it comes to
even
at
if
t-shirts,
the end,
because everybody's making them and all
mhm,
that, and
and the thing
who is
is
going to be.
some of these black business owners because they do business they clearly have to know some of this shit like that because again they don't get
Right.
their books from their backyard but when
Yeah.
they promote themselves they don't it's almost as if that shit is erased from the scenario. It's not in the equation even though I know you have to buy like we were just giving that example 2/3 of your stuff comes from another country. Most of y'all are in retail, so I know
Mhm.
y'all have to figure out what the wholesale situation is and where you're going to get your shit from. There's no way you are a functioning business and you don't do
Y'all are
this.
posting on
Yeah.
TikTok where to get the wholesalers,
Yeah.
like the links to the wholesalers.
So it's like they know what it is, but I'm just saying, like at the end of the day, it's vested. And this is just capitalism and the class hierarchy that comes with it. Like it's just I'm not gonna tell folks what this is, and then like we'll get to a little bit later where we can even say some of it now. Like I think my theory is I don't think a lot of folks because capitalism naturalizes a lot of this. I don't think people think they can overcome any of that of any of the shit we've discussed. So the only thing they think they have quote unquote power in is when they buy things. Is if they buy or if they don't buy something. Right. The rest of this is something they don't think they have any real vested stake in, you know.
I would agree with you there because it's like, look, I ain't got no control over this. I ain't got the best option I have is where I choose to spend what little money I do have.
Yeah.
And so like,
I think that's where a lot of people land. The average person who's not really trying to like necessarily get off on anything or exploit people. It's just that's where the average person might land. But my argument is black capitalism is a culprit in and just erasing all that other stuff and act like you have no role in that. Like you don't go to work and make money for somebody and your labor is irrelevant. Notice black capitalists never talk about labor. Like they want people to work for them, but they never tell you how much they're going to pay you. None of
never.
these things, they don't. There's no benefit. They don't really talk
Bro,
about
they
labor.
they 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 stray so far against labor where you get the whole bullshit conversation of, oh, we all need to be entrepreneurs and all this, and I'm like, bro, well, who's working
Yeah,
to actually buy the shit that you trying to
it
sell?
doesn't. Again,
And I'm like, bro, I was like, and I don't. That's the shit that just confuses me. I'm like, bro, you asking me to invest in your situation, and this is like I said, we're just making another black person rich that really is not doing anything for the community. But hey, whatever. I supported a black business, but then you want to down me for my labor?
black buying power is this idea that black people have some, as Dr. Ball would say, this sovereign pool of wealth, or this faucet of wealth that we all can, spend and that we need to tap into it and support each other. That's why it complements the circulating black dollar because it's like, well, if this is the money we have, then this is the money we can circulate. You'll see headlines: black people have $2 trillion in buying power, 1.4, 1.98, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it comes out of like the C League Center for Economic Growth. Nielsen and McKinsey and companies are three main companies that produce this shit. But even they say like buying power is simply everything you have to your name. So if you just so we did a little simple equation in the article. If we just break the percentages of black median household into rent, that's 30 to 40% of your income. Childcare, as we're all learning, 25%, if not more, of your income. Food, 17% of your income, and we're already at about 80%. Right? Like we're already, and that doesn't even count. It doesn't account for debt or anything else. And now you have no more money. Like this is very, this is so everything that you have to your name is not most of that money is already spoken for. Is the point? So even if this was an accurate assessment, everything that you have to your name is mostly spoken for in your bills. So it's not like we all have this money that we can just go do anything we want with it. And that's not how this works. And then on top of that, the projections of these numbers are not even real because, like Dr. Ball pointed out, you'd have to take every man, woman, and child to get to those numbers. And obviously, children at our none of our kids have jobs right now, right?
Their
So
only job is to run us. It
Yeah,
just
but
I
hey,
every time like we hear it and even seeing the breakdown and knowing that these numbers are made up and that they're inflated, it just all feels real racist. It makes me think back to, and granted, I'm just building my own parallels. I've not done enough research to know that these two things were made intentionally, but it makes me think about how white folks who had owned us as property as slaves were literally calculating how much money they could make based on our labor and just making up
free
actual
money.
figures from that. And now
yeah,
trying to say, well, now that we don't have y'all as free labor anymore,
you
let's talk
need,
about how you can spend the money you're making from the labor you have
yeah,
to still make us money.
yeah, it's bullshit. Yeah,
It
I mean,
feels disgusting.
I think that's actually a good. I think that's a great assessment. I think that holds up.
It's
Yeah,
probably
that's
Mhm.
why they are
Yeah,
pushing buying power
because
so much.
it's like, yeah, it
Can't
doesn't.
estimate your labor impact anymore, for your free labor impact, but we can estimate how much you can continue to line our pockets.
Yeah, and like again, buying power is actually just Like I said, the money you have, and it was originally that term originally came from what the Bureau of Labor Statistics was just like, how much money do people have to buy available goods? That's all it used to mean. Spending power, buying power. How much money do we have to buy the shit that we actually make it work? And if we're not paid enough to then go consume, then the wages don't really make sense. You got to at least pay people enough to reproduce themselves, right? Now, black folks often get paid a sub wage, so we can't often reproduce ourselves. Reproducing is simply just to say, how can you pay your bills, eat everything so you can come back to work the next day? Um, but what's interesting to Cam's point is like they relegate you to this consumer aspect of it when there's all these other parts of the supply chain. The supply chain is again, how do things get made and put to a thing? So to give people another example, we already broke down that dollar. Things start at a very simple level. It starts with raw materials. Things have to come out of the ground in some way, shape, or form to make whatever products you eventually buy. So we go from raw materials, then it has to go to some kind of supplier, then it has to go to some kind of manufacturer. Then that manufacturer has to distribute it it goes to a distributor that then sells it to the retailer, and then you come in on the consumption side of it. So buying power is telling you that the raw materials, the supplier. So after things are packaged, refined, shipped, sold, transparent, transported, all of that stuff happens. You're supposed to come in at the end of it with your buying power and start the revolution, despite all this stuff happening before.
That's not actually funny. It's really sad, but it's funny to hear
Like
it out loud.
it doesn't.
And a great point of it is going back to our episode about Patrice Lumumba and the Congo. When we talk about American imperialism, they're literally going after the raw materials
Yeah,
Hmm.
so they can own the production of all that to then complete this whole cycle.
yeah,
So they're literally eliminating us from that portion of it.
And they're eliminating others.
Yep.
yeah,
Even
Us, yeah,
other
others,
And
yeah.
nations, larger nations can't even have their own sovereignty because the US and other parties are come in and are actually stealing and exploiting within these other countries. So other countries themselves can't even have sovereignty. And so if an entire
nope.
nation can't have sovereignty for themselves and own their own means of production, what does that say for Jaquan who wants to sell hats?
yeah,
Yeah, and to your point, Terrell, about Patrice Lumumba and anybody who comes up to challenge this whole cycle, they end up like Patrice Lumumba, they end up assassinated,
yeah,
deported. There's coups
And
that
then
get funded by the
they
U.S.
auction off your teeth.
Yeah,
yeah,
there's coups that get funded by the U.S. I mean, and then they establish a leader that's going to do business with U.S. and look upon the U.S. favorably, you
be
know.
friendly.
Hmm. Yeah, so
But it's
this
like
right here, this cycle right here is an integral part of imperialism and how they maintain power.
yeah, because it's like if you own the raw materials, everybody got to go through you.
Yep.
That's the
Yeah.
thing about if I sell phones at my store, well, there's a bunch of stores that sell phones. You know what I mean? Like you ain't got to come to my store. But if I own the shit that goes in the phones, like it don't really matter what store it go to, bro. I'm straight. You know what
You
I'm
good
saying?
Yeah.
now.
Like, like if I own the place that refines the stuff that comes out of the ground, that means that when they take the cobalt or whatever from the ground to put in my phone, that somebody has to extract it and put and refine it in a way where it can now be placed into phones in the small particles that it needs to go in. Again, everybody needs that. You got to go through me. And we could just do this all day. If I own the semis that have to be that transport the stuff to the retailer, like those got to go to a bunch of different places, right? So by the time
Even
it,
thinking simply like
yeah,
drug dealers, everybody wanted to take out the boss and be the
Oh,
plug. However, they still didn't own the means of production because you didn't own the cocoa farm.
no,
You think
you
that you are
literally,
now
you literally.
sovereign because you can run things because you have at least eliminated one party, but however, you still don't actually own the farm that is making the production, and you don't run the labor it takes to actually break things down into drugs. You don't own the boats that were bringing things over. All you did was eliminate one piece of the puzzle.
yeah.
And so you think you
Cam
are
was
a
literally, you
boss.
literally went to my next point, and you said it beautifully. Thank you.
You know, I know you love a drug reference.
Wow.
I did that with
Wow.
Corona.
See,
No.
y'all see, you see what I got? You see what I deal with these fools?
I mean, she ain't wrong. Uh, but
Not a
yeah, I mean,
snowball,
but
just
this
to you.
this will be
I'm
like
just
this will
saying it
be
makes sense.
yeah, this would be like the drug addicts coming in and saying like we're gonna buy, we're gonna use our buying power to stop the drug trade. Like that's how silly that sounds, when you think about it. Like
Yeah.
because the drug addicts are the consumer in this equation, you know. So it's like the consumer is the last line before it goes back into a loop. So why is that where we get focused and all these other things happen? And that's just not real estate that we're allowed to even walk into. It's and that's the kids corner thing because this is the thing you don't even this is not for you to even come. You don't even come over here. Don't even talk to us about this. This is not you. Go over there and talk about consumption and boycott Target or something.
Yeah.
Like that's the kids corner bullshit. It's like you don't even get
Yeah.
to deal with how this works. And again, we're giving y'all like this is simple shit. Like we started getting into the real econ stuff that's
Mhm.
over all of our heads. It gets even more complicated.
And
But
even how Target actually makes its profit. There's no discussion of that at all either. But go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, like surveillance. So
Exactly.
And I think what's sad and where a lot of, like I said, both manufactured ignorance and just unintentional ignorance from our community is that like Black capitalists act like there is no supply chain. Like folks just act like these goods just show up. There were no deals, no taxes involved, and that we just now we have these things and we're expected to support the people selling them when there's an entire ecosystem at play that runs off being insidious and exploitative in nature. And so it's like we said in the very beginning, if folks are going to be a part of this, they need to understand where they fit into this as a whole. And just on a base level, understand the cycle and how these things come about to begin with. Like just because you know the distributor for your product, like you also need to understand every single thing else, like and what goes into it in order to be able to function with some type of knowledge, even if you're not going to function with integrity.
yeah, I mean, it's just again, it doesn't become a serious conversation. I think
Mm-mm.
something I wrote at the end, and then we can get into some closing thoughts. This kind of speaks to what Terrell was saying, but like I said, the most devastating role of black capitalism is to reify. Reify just means to give power to properties that don't actually have them. So all of a sudden, my computer is a god or something, right? When it like as opposed to just being a computer that somebody made. The most devastating role of black capitalism is to reify the man-made laws of capitalism as seemingly natural to us. Thus, to the black capitalist, there is no supply chain, no trade deals, no tariffs. Things just magically appear on stores or on stoops. Nobody stocked the shelves or drove the items to the front door. Nobody had to pee in a bottle to deliver them on time. Nobody died mining the diamonds for delivery. Nobody was assassinated while organizing a union just west of the country where they were mined. Nah, nope. These horrors are simply the consequence of a natural order that we can do nothing about, nothing at all. They cannot be effectively protested, resisted, or transformed. They just are. Capitalism thereby becomes gravity. So, of course, the problem is not capitalism, but the lack of black participation in it. Hence, why buying power is fetishized as an activity completely devoid of our labor. We apparently have no role in how commodities are made, just bought. Our quote unquote power is vested in what we consume, as if we play no role in producing it. Capitalism is natural law. So, of course, consumption is the only logical path to power. Like that's effectively the impact that black capitalism has, which again I just feel like sums up what everybody already said. Is like, you know, we're not allowed to play in these, and that's why the kids corner thing hit me late. I originally it was just like what it teaches us, and I think some of this because I was writing it with my kid in my lab, but like it was just this is kids corner shit, and like we always say on this show, black people deserve rigor. Black people deserve like actual serious analysis. Even when we're wrong, we at least deserve people who do their best to crunch the numbers or crunch the information. Like we just deserve that. And it's very frustrating watching this black capitalism craze really take off in ways that I don't even remember when I was younger, because it's just got folks totally divorced from reality. And this is what, Marx talks about. Like it's capitalism alienates you from your labor and it fetishizes things, that really don't have any real power. Like you start giving power away to something that's just a product that you had a role in making, but you think the iPhone in and of itself has some special powers to it, like as opposed to somebody put it together, or
iPhone,
yeah,
real estate.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then so you're alienated from the fact that you contributed to the process, and black capitalism alienates you from that and teaches you that you are only a consumer, not you are nothing else. Like we don't all go to work. You know what I mean? Like we don't all do something. We don't all produce some wealth somewhere for somebody. And we're not part. And it also severs you from the girl in Cambodia that has to cut off her hair. You don't even have to think about her, right? It severs you from the kid in the sweatshop. It severs you from all these things. And then when you hear about it, even helps you rationalize, well, that's not my problem. I got to worry about mine, whatever. And all of this stuff is what enables this shit to keep going.
The game is a lot more than buy for one, sell for two.
Yeah. So
it's a lot deeper than that.
So yeah. So anyway, any last thoughts? I think we got through this pretty smoothly. It was a lot of information to cover. I don't know how long we've been on here, but but I think we got through this fairly smoothly. But any last thoughts? I know, like Terrell was saying in the text, people will be like, "Well, what's the solution?"
Communism.
Yeah, and also like we've been doing this shit for 5 years. Y'all know what our solutions are. Don't ask me that shit, man.
Exactly. That's a good point. You know us. You've been rocking with us for a long time. You know how this shit goes.
Our answer is the same every time.
Don't act Brandon.
Read a book. Tell other people to read a fucking book. And
yeah, that part. And I guess as closing thoughts, I mean, black people obviously deserve more than the kid's corner. You know what I mean? If you believe that black people deserve dignity, to live their lives with dignity, then you do deserve the truth. Black capitalism is tied to a global economy that exploits not only black people here in this nation, but others in the global south. You're not going to overthrow or ease the ramifications of capitalism by taking part in it. You may make some money, but you're just making it to invest back into a system of exploitation.
Yeah.
Boom.
And just know that. Like, don't act like you are, on some moral high horse with your business. You are not.
Got cut off there, but yeah. So I hope y'all. Again, we might do because we don't want to ramble on tonight, but we might do one. Maybe if it's not all of us, might do some extra time on Patreon with this one because I do think the solution conversation will be interesting for people who actually care about that kind of thing, not for those of you who are just mad because your solution was just defeated. So that's a whole different conversation. But I do think there's something to think about, some of the contradictions that we need to be able to work through when it comes to capitalism, and how maybe some of the positives we can marshal to our side and the negatives we can move on from. But other than that, thanks for listening. Please read the piece. There's a little bit more information we shared in there. And yeah, glad to have the crew back on, and we'll hopefully be back for some more. Prosperity Gospel is the next one I want to do as a team because I just think that'll be an interesting.
It'll be a lot of shit talking.
Yeah. But
my cup is gone, so we gone.
All right, peace, y'all.
Peace.
Okay, fresh out the plane in a whole nother state. I'm trying to eat down a whole nother plate. Seem like my homies was